Synodality is not going to fix this. Climate change nonsense babbling on and on is not going to fix this. These children, these lost sheep, these lost souls, they need shepherds. They need Jesus Christ.
You know, like we've seen with the tragedy in Minnesota and things that are happening in the news line, people are sick and people need hope and people need Jesus and they need the love of God.
Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. I am Michael Matt. This is the Remnant Underground. Once again, a couple of housekeeping notes. We are in the last few hours of the flash sale, right? Catholic Identity Conference flash sale goes on until midnight tonight, Sunday night. Sign up for that, 40% off. We're really trying to get young people. We understand how difficult it is financially right now. Everybody's struggling, and I know these conferences are not cheap, but that's absolutely unavoidable. We're bringing speakers in from all over the world. It's a huge event, lots of a 3-day event. But we want to make it as easy as possible for you, the folks who have been following us so loyally for so long. So 40% off for the whole weekend. That includes the meals, that includes all the talks, camaraderie, fellowship, uniting the clans. 5 bishops are going to be there. This is a really, really big deal. Again, we want to make it very clear to people that we do not believe as traditional Catholics that we are going to save the church. It's never been the point. We're always scanning the horizon for bishops, for shepherds, for successors of the apostles, who understand the urgent crisis in the world today, and that the Catholic Church, a restored Catholic Church, is the only way out of this. The proclamation of the social kingship of Jesus Christ is the only way out of this. And so we have really worked hard to bring in these 5 bishops. We've developed relationships with these bishops over the years. They're all moving in the direction of tradition. They all understand the problem with synodality and the problem with a church that's become, I'm sorry, in the human element of the church has become largely ineffectual, has been really not providing a service. And we're going to talk about this shooting in Minneapolis in a moment, because that's the result of the fact that the Catholic Church is more or less, humanly speaking, has been missing in action for a long time. This is going to be, I think, I'm quite convinced, a history-making conference, especially since we got 5. But it's not just 5 bishops. We also have a lot of great speakers. Maybe Walter will throw some of those up on the screen so you can understand this is going to be a big event. I can't wait to meet you all. I will be emceeing for the 3 days. You might get sick of me, but I'll be there for the whole time. We'll have plenty of chances to talk and to unite the clans. So sign up right now. A few hours left for the Catholic Identity Conference's flash sale to help bring families and young people. By the way, students get in for what?
$50 to $100.
$50? Okay. There's a student rate. Kids get under free. Bring the kids under 12 are free, and that includes meals. So it's a family event, family-friendly event. It's going to be great. Also, before I talk on this, I get into this very tragic news here in Minneapolis once again, I wanted to mark the passing of a beautiful Catholic priest. I've spoken before about what we as kids used to call the men in black, priests who came from all over the world. Before there was a Society of St. Pius X or an Institute of Christ the King or a Fraternity of St. Peter or an indult mass, to give the traditional Latin Mass to the traditional Latin Mass movement, which was underground, talking about the early 70s. His name is Father James Dunphy. He is a La Salette father, was a La Salette father. He has passed. He was 97 years old. And I really want to ask for your prayers, because he was an old-fashioned traditional priest. The last thing he would want is for us to canonize him. So please pray for the repose of the soul of Father James Dunphy, a priest who set up a telephone apostolate all through the 70s and 80s, whereby people could call him in times of stress and in need and spiritual dark night of the soul. And he was a beautiful, I think, a saintly priest. The thing that's interesting, then I'll move on, a lot of these priest people say, yeah, well, he was a renegade, man. He disobeyed. No, he didn't disobey. You know what he did? You know what he actually did? Because he refused to say the new Mass, he said that his order allowed him to say the traditional Latin Mass, but only in his private residence. So for, 40 years, this beautiful soul said the traditional Latin Mass in his home, never said the Novus Ordo Mass, and therefore was basically, he was imprisoned in his own house. He couldn't leave. Because he wanted, obviously, to take advantage of the great privilege that a priest has to say the Mass. So if he wanted to say the Mass every day, he had to stay basically in confinement, which is what he did. So I want to mark the passing of Father James Dunphy. He was one of the great traditional Catholic men in black, the priests who never gave up, who inspired so many families like ours around the world, and who now has gone to his eternal reward. So please pray for Father James Dunphy. Eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord. Let perpetual light shine upon him. May his soul and all the souls of the faithful departed rest in peace. Now, to this most unfortunate shooting in Minneapolis. In a minute here, I'm going to have Taylor Marshall come in and talk about his new book, which gets to what has to happen politically and spiritually in this country, or this kind of thing is just going to continue.
This was just an act of hatred against goodness and against innocence. You come to a holy place attacking the most innocent among us.
Using 3 legally purchased guns, the shooter fired through stained glass windows, now boarded over, killing a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old and wounding children and adults alike. On Thursday, prosecutors said the attacker deliberately targeted children.
I have a little bit different take on this. Minneapolis has been burning for a long time. You'll remember the BLM riots and everything that went on with the George Floyd, which this was a flashpoint for international revolution. And before that happened, the Mayor Fry, who's still the mayor here in Minneapolis, he actually established something called Abortion Providers Appreciation Day in the city. Right? So this has been a long time coming. Our city, to me, seems like sort of a microcosmic or an example of what happens when the social kingship of Jesus Christ is not only denied, but it is actually officially rejected. You end up with chaos. Crime is skyrocketed. So what happened 2 days ago now was in no sense a surprise to us. The little bit of a difference with this tragic event is that this young man was a Catholic and came from a Catholic family that had been, at least not too long ago, a fairly conservative family. So this could happen to anyone, really. His family was more on the conservative trajectory. There were some marital problems, like there was a divorce or something in the family. And then all hell broke loose. And we end up with a confused and messed up young man who's dabbling in what can only be described as diabolical titillation, or there's a diabolical confusion, right? So if you're looking for me to condemn this kid, as the problem, you're not going to find that today. He's not the problem. He's the consequence. He's the casualty, this little boy that couldn't decide if he was a boy or a girl, and nobody stopped. Nobody stopped to help him. You look at what this guy was doing during the run-up to this shooting. It was one constant scream for help, and nobody helped him. Nobody helped this guy. The church wasn't there. The state wasn't there. The social workers weren't there, right? And so now you have an unguided missile, if you will. You've got a maniac on the loose whose soul has been just destroyed and his heart has been kicked out of him. Nobody cares. And they call it compassion, Doesn't even know which bathroom to use. Doesn't even know if he's a woman or a man or a boy or a girl, right? Nobody cared. That's the problem. That's the problem. And so I would say, Mayor Fry, the guy who I really cannot stand, the Minneapolis mayor, he came out and said, "Don't beat up on the trans community." Well, so he's just going to continue to promote that sort of diabolical confusion for kids. That's what their agenda is, to continue to promote this in children rather than to help them, to sort of aid and abet them, to accompany them into hell, which is what's happening. But even that, even the liberal, leftist, socialist, Minneapolis social uplift people who have gone completely insane. You can see the lieutenant governor here on the screen right now, a big advocate of trans kids. Why she's wearing a t-shirt with a knife, I have no idea. But we've crossed over into a different realm now. This is sheer demonic insanity. Not only are the inmates running the asylum, but the inmates are satanic. They're evil, right? Why is that? Is it their fault? Is it the lieutenant governor of Minnesota? Is it her fault? Is it the mayor of Minneapolis? Is it his fault? No, it's not their fault. And it's so easy to blame the Democrats, right? To blame the liberals, to blame the wokesters. The problem is they're just filling a vacuum, friends. That's all they're doing. They're doing all they know how to do. The problem is, who created the vacuum? The vacuum was created by the Catholic Church in her human element. This happened at a Catholic school, right? This was a Catholic student. This was one of theirs who went off the rails, right? Shot through stained glass at kids going to mass, right? Attacking the church, attacking Christ, attacking innocence, right? So broken and destroyed. What happened? How did we end up with casualties like this? And it's going to continue. It's already continuing here. We were on lockdown again in Minneapolis just yesterday. Another shooting. It's going to continue, right? Until the Catholic Church wakes up, until the bishops and the Pope wake up to what's going on here. So no, I'm not here to bash the trans community. I'm not here to bash the radical leftist, ultra-leftist Minneapolis mayor or the governor of Minnesota. The problem is this chaos that's been unleashed on formerly Catholic towns like St. Paul, Minnesota, in Minneapolis, this has been unleashed because of the Catholic Church's abandoning of her mission. So if you want to be constructive, if you want to have a conversation about what we should be doing, we should be demanding that our bishops and our shepherds, including the Pope, stop with the climate change nonsense. Stop trying to stop people who are trying to strengthen up the borders of this country. Stop trying to get involved in politics and recycling and all of this stuff. Anything, saying absolutely anything other than what they're supposed to say. The Catholic bishops, the Pope included. The four last things, death, judgment, heaven, and hell. Whatever happened to any of that? You see the problem? You can't blame the cause. You can't blame the effects, the casualties, the consequences of this. What's the cause? What's the root cause? And this is where I get very frustrated as a traditional Catholic, when everything that we're standing for and everything we're fighting for can be dismissed as liturgical preferences and Latin snobbery. It's not what it is, friends. We are fighting for the soul of humanity by fighting for the Catholic Restoration. We just came back from Africa, where we see the Catholic Church, the traditional Catholic Church, becoming strong again. Africa becoming strong again, fighting against the world, the flesh, and the devil. That's what traditional Catholicism has always been all about. It must be about that. That's what it's all about, the Christ or chaos, right? You either have Christ or chaos. What we have now is chaos. We're living in chaos. Half of us are running around armed now because it's so chaotic. That's not going to help. All the police, all the guns in the world, there's not enough. If we can't go back to policing ourselves as a society and a civilization, you can expect nothing more than dead kids. That's where it's going to continue to go. Your excellencies, your eminences, your holiness. Synodality is not going to fix this. Climate change, nonsense, babbling on and on is not going to fix this. These children, these lost sheep, these lost souls, they need shepherds. They need Jesus Christ. They need the church. They need Holy Mother Church to assume her role once again. So do not blame the left or the Democrats for what's going on here. The problem here is a Catholic hierarchy which has abandoned its post. It's no longer a hierarchy, it's hirelings, with few and notable exceptions, of course. So yeah, my heart breaks for what's going on here. I didn't know this family directly, the family of the shooter, but I know I have friends and family who did know them and who are weeping today over what happened, what became of this kid that nobody cared about, right? To the point where he becomes a monster, a soulless, godless, Catholic-free monster. You see? So I would say let's use this poor and unfortunate incident, first of all, to pray for the victims, pray for the families, pray for the kid who's now dead, the poor messed up kid who now faces the fires of hell because he immersed himself in demonism in the wake where the Catholic Church used to be. He's not supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be here. This is where he ended up because we abandoned him, right? So I would say let's use this as an example of what truly, let's to keep our focus, what the point and purpose of the Catholic Restoration is all about. Yes, it's about the salvation of our souls and the souls of our children. Also, friends, if we don't wake up to this, it's also about self-defense. It's also about the lives of our kids, of our society, of our culture. People are dying now, right? So the revolution, the spirit of Vatican II, is a threat to your soul, and it is a threat to your body, and it is a threat to the lives and future of your children. When do we wake up? When do we wake up? That's what the Catholic Restoration movement is all about, okay? So we're going to continue, obviously, to fight for this holy cause because it is the only answer. It's the only answer. It's out of control now. Things are out of control now. And we need the bishops and the Pope, yes, the Pope, to wake up to what their job actually is. And we need to pray for them to wake up. And to that end, very pleased to talk to my friend Taylor Marshall today because he's got a new book out I haven't read the book yet. I don't know if I agree with every single thing yet because I haven't read it yet. But I really appreciate the effort to try to provide some theological, Catholic, political principles that will help ultimately, if enough people understand what it means to be Catholic and what role the Catholic Church should play culturally and politically, maybe that it could stop some of the chaos that's going on. So everybody knows who Taylor Marshall is, and I'm really, really happy to have him on the show today to talk about his new book, which is Christian Patriots, 12 Ways to Have a Country Devoted to God, I think is the subtitle. I'm very pleased to welcome Taylor Marshall.
Michael, Matt, great to be here.
You know, I salute you for trying, because this is a big boulder that you're pushing up the hill, but it's an essential, absolutely essential boulder.
I just want to change the conversation. I know there's been some wins, with the Republicans and the conservatives and with Trump and MAGA, but as we think about that, like, is MAGA and is the platform of Trump what we need in 4 years, 8 years, 16 years, 32 years? Or do we really need to work for a Christian vision of the social reign of Christ the King? Like, that's, I think, what Jesus is calling us to when we pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Like, the social realm needs to be sanctified as well. And, like we've seen with the tragedy in Minnesota and things that are happening in the news line, people are sick and people need hope and people need Jesus and they need the love of God. So, this book is really just a challenge and I think a helpful nudge to people to say, you know what, bringing Christ and bringing God into the public conversation, you shouldn't be embarrassed about that. You should be bold about that. That's who we are.
It comes as a surprise even to traditional Catholics. The reason God created us is not life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Did you know that? It's actually, that's a heresy. That's a heresy. Yeah. Self-rule is a heresy, in fact. But yeah, so you have to do what Pope Leo XIII did, all the great social teaching popes did. They tried to Catholicize or Christianize the whole democratic system and make sure that Christians, that Catholics did not see their role as soldiers of Jesus Christ as something that should be hidden except for Sunday morning. So I'm really curious. I got to be honest. I have not read your book yet, but I went over it and I said, oh my gosh, you're tackling everything. You're going after a lot of sacred cows here. And I'm curious to know, what is the future? Like, in other words, you've tried, a lot of us have tried so hard not to give up on Trump, because there's no reason for us to expect Donald Trump to be a champion of the social kingship of Jesus Christ. So as you say, there have been some victories, a change of pace a little bit lately. But this is now the time for us, and I assume that's why you've written this book. This is a time for us as Catholics to strike. What Trump needs, I think, what Donald Trump needs is to hear from people like yourself who are saying, no, it doesn't stop here. It's not just wearing a red hat for ad infinitum for the next 20 years. We have to take this time that we've been given, where there's a little bit of a reprieve, to remind the world, and I'm sorry, but also to remind the Trump administration, which I don't think is that much of a challenge. There are a lot of Catholics there that that can be reached, hopefully they'll read your book, to understand that the social kingship of Jesus Christ, without the social kingship of Jesus Christ, MAGA is going to crash. We're just repeating 1950s conservatism if we don't have the social kingship of Jesus Christ. So I don't know. I don't know if, again, I wish I could speak from having read your book. But where does the social kingship then come in the conservative movement in the United States, the MAGA movement? How do we inject in a serious way the essential proclamation of the social kingship in all of this?
I mean, the great thing about being a Catholic, Michael, and you know this, is it's already been done several dozen times. And in the book, I list all the countries, beginning with Armenia and the Roman Empire under Constantine, and then all the way through towards the nation of Georgia and France and England and Portugal and Spain and the Holy Roman Empire. It's been done so many times. And have there been failures along the way? And have there been evil Catholic kings? And yes, I mean, we grant all those things. But the project of creating a society, and it's not just political, it's cultural, it's economic. Talk about all these things in the book. We have done it. The church has done it. Christians have done it many, many times. So I think for us to sit, in 2025 and be like, that's impossible, it'll never happen. I bet if you went back to like 250 AD and said, the Roman Empire, what if we just made it Catholic? They'd probably be like, are you crazy? Like, we're in a catacomb right now and people are trying to kill us and they just killed our bishop and our deacon. But yet by 313 and then into the 320s, Constantine, who, wasn't the most stalwart saint of all time, you start to see that the Christians in the empire are having an influence in the political sphere, so that by the year 381, 382, Theodosius, you actually have Catholic laws entering into the codices of the Roman Empire in the Roman government. And that's just, less than 100-year period for that window for it to reach that point. And so there's something supernatural about it. This is why we pray our rosaries, we attend mass. But there is a call to us to be active. And so I wanted to challenge people to challenge the wall of separation of church and state. I think that's really key. I think that the younger generation, Generation Z, I think they're open to that. I think they're open to the idea of rethinking what is the intersection between the Christian faith and the nation and the politics. And I think, you're seeing that in Europe when you do the Chartres pilgrimage, all these grassroots movements, they're young, they're youthful people. They love the idea of what France was like under Catholicism. Absolutely. And that beautiful integration there. And so I think because the conservative movement has failed in so many ways, again, we've had some wins, but I think culturally, the Democrats in the 1990s were almost more conservative than some of the Republicans on the ticket now. We have to do something different, and just doing MAGA even harder, I don't think is the way forward. What we really need is this spiritual influx. And I think we're seeing it in sort of the influencer social, you're seeing conversions of people to Catholicism. I could rattle off a ton of them, like Candace Owens and others, where their message, even Nick Fuentes, who's super controversial, like he's constantly bringing like Catholicism into the conversation. Tucker Carlson's also interviewing people on Joe Rogan on the Shroud of Turin. Like there is a moment now where people are like, okay, I don't see a lot of tools. I don't see a lot of hope for fixing all of this. Let's talk to the Catholics. Yeah. What do you guys have to say? And I think there is a great moment right now. And unfortunately, I think, in the hierarchy, they're not really primed right now. But I think within this sort of emerging social class of influencers and cultural movers, we are seeing an openness to Catholicism. So I think this is when we strike and we say, look, we have a different vision. We have a 2,000-year-old political philosophy. We want to share that with you. And I think we also have to and I show this in the book, like when we talk about a Christian nation or Christian patriotism or Christendom, we're not saying everybody line up, we're going to put a weapon to your head and you must be baptized. We're going to start coercing everyone and violating consciences. That's not really what Christendom was ever about. And there might have been some cases, but what we are saying is the nation, according to Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Stoics, natural law, Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, the nation is the collection of the family units. Leo the 13th and Rerum Novarum says that exact precise thing. Pope Leo the 14th has said it in his first 30 days of the papacy. If we take the idea that the family unit rooted in the sacrament of matrimony is the building block, it's the Lego block of building society. If that's the case, think of my family. Think of your family, Michael. If I came to your house, there's probably a statue of the Virgin Mary outside,
or two.
There's a crucifix on the wall. There's holy water. There's missals. There's Bibles. By missals, I mean mass books, not that. You would pray, you make the sign of the cross. And if someone came into your house and said, oh, whoa, don't say the prayer over the food. And you're like, well, this is my house. Like, we're Catholic. This is what we do. Or take that crucifix down. I don't like that. It offends me. You're like, leave. Yeah. This is my Catholic house. So once you understand and think that's a rational way of living your life, if the nation is a collection of those families and the majority of those families are Catholic or Christian, and they're like, take down that cross. You can't pray. You can't make the sign of the cross. It's like, who are you?
Yeah, yeah.
We are a Christian people, which is an assembly of Christian families. This is what we do. If we want the 10 Commandments in the courthouse, we're going to put the 10 Commandments in the courthouse. If we're going to have a 100-foot statue of a cross or of Christ or some Christian symbol, we're going to do it because that's who we are. And we've been so afraid. And this goes back, like you said, the 1950s after World War II. everybody had these really extreme ideas during World War I and World War II. So let's not have extreme ideas anymore. Y'all take your Christianity and go put it in the closet. No more in the public square. And then the deal, Michael, is let's shake hands as gentlemen and we'll be neutral, rational people in the public square, and we'll all get along and it'll be the common good. What happened by the 60s? They invaded that vacuum. They came in, they started pushing all the agendas of what is the new secular religion, where they have an inquisition where they can cancel you. They have their own feast days. They have their own parades, their pride parades. They're in the library. They're in the courthouse. They have completely, in a sort of antichrist perversion, created an antichrist Christendom where they are merging a state religion with the state.
Absolutely.
And persecuting us. And so in the book, I'm like, we need to call them out for their religion. They say, oh, we're not a religion. You are a religion. You are a religion. And we are the dominant religion. Y'all are the minority religion. And so we're now going to be public. We are now going to have our own parades, our own Eucharistic processions, our Marian processions, our crosses, our prayers, our signs of the cross. And so I give 12 steps in the book of how we can implement this in the public. Because while we are, in a way, losing, we're not out. I mean, we're on our back heel fighting, but the fact that they're attacking us so much still shows that we have great strength in the culture. So it's not a black pill, it's a white pill. Let's take this moment. I think it's a red hot moment for us. And I think young people, Gen Z, are ready for it. And you're seeing like Gen Z men are just like leaning so hard right. And I think, within that movement, there's a lot of sort of race identity and then also faith identity. And I think a moment of presenting something like you do so well, let's have a crusade. Let's do this for Christendom. Let's do this for the house of Christ. Deus Vult. Let's call them. I think we're in that moment.
Absolutely. Well said. And the thing is that we have to undo the revisionist history, because a lot of people on our side think what you just said is wild, pie in the sky nonsense. But you think about how many confessional states there are. Israel's a confessional state right now.
Yeah, exactly. And if you say, should Israel have preference of Judaism in the country? Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how about America? If it's majority Christian, should we have a Christian preference? No.
Yeah,
so there's a
crazy.
complete double standard. And we Christians have to just start saying, nope, this is what we're doing. Thank you. We're now proceeding with our path. Thank you.
And you don't have to look that far back. If you look back to from the Know Nothing movement all the way up through the pontificate of Pope Pius XII, which ends in 1958, what's the concern? The concern is that the Catholic Church, the Catholic voting bloc, is going to turn America into a Catholic country. Why? Because you have Pius XI talking against contraception. You have Pius XII writing encyclicals and allocutions on the importance of the large family. So just numerically, with the immigrants coming from Catholic countries to our country, they were very concerned that a simple Catholic culture based on the Catholic family was going to change the world, And I can't help but looking at your book and thinking, man, if people would read this and take it seriously, and even within the confines of the Latin Mass movement, to understand it wasn't just a crackdown on the Latin Mass preference. In my opinion, there was a concern with the globalists, including the globalists in the Vatican, that traditional Catholic families, the traditional Catholic Latin Mass movement was giving birth to these huge families, which was changing the fabric of society. And there was a concern once again from the globalists, if the Catholic people go back to the Catholic faith, we've got nothing to compete with that.
Yeah. And, liturgically, I think both of our audience love the Latin Mass and the old calendar. But liturgically, when the feast of the Institute of the Feast of the Christ the King was instituted, it was placed in the context of the end of October with All Saints. Right. And the whole idea is Christ is the King, and from Christ comes all the saints. Right. There's this connection there. And in the Novus Ordo and in the revision, they made Christ the King at the end of ordinary time, right before Advent. And a lot of people just shrugged or didn't really notice what happened there. But if you think about it, placing Christ the King in the context of just before All Saints shows that Christ the King has come to make all saints and to transform earth.
Right.
By putting Christ the King at the end of ordinary time, at the end of the year, it's really turning the kingship of Jesus Christ into an eschatological reality. Jesus will be king at the end when he comes back.
Right.
In the meantime, in the social, nothing's going to happen. We're losers, right? That's That's an important emphasis, and liturgy
Absolutely.
matters, and the liturgical calendar matters.
Yeah.
You know, is Christ the King creating saints and transforming the world, or is Christ the King just sort of as an afterthought at the end of time? And I think what you're seeing, and you've seen this all over influencers and political commentary, this whole emphasis on Christ is king. Christ is the king. He has kingship. He has dominion now in this world. And I'll tell you, the liberals and the Democrats and our enemies, they do not like that at all.
Right.
The idea of Christ is king now, Christ rules now. They hate, they're like, let that be in your closet. Let it be at the end of time, but not right now.
No, exactly.
Not in 2025. And we have to, in fidelity to the popes and to Christ himself, in his passion, in his death and resurrection, he is the king right now. Every knee will bend to him. And we are here lovingly with the Gospels and the Beatitudes to show you the beauty of Christ's teaching. And the teaching of Christ is very social. Mm-hmm. It has to do for society. Look, read the Beatitudes. This is social teaching. We want to bring that social teaching to the public square, and we are going to do it.
That's just well said. I mean, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. On earth, our Lord, and the prayer that he taught us. I think it's so important for people to realize that Christ the King, Christ is King. This is not a devotion. This is not a pious little devotion. Pius XI, when he promulgated Quas Primas, this is right between World War I and World War II. The world is in complete chaos. So what does he say? Well, let's dialogue with both sides and see if we can't journey together. No, he says, unless you proclaim Christ the King of nations, the King of yourself, of your family, and of nations, there's no chance for peace. So I think, especially Catholics now, go back, look at the treasure that is yours. And I'm assuming that's what they're going to find in your book, the treasure that is yours. It's all given to us. The answer is given to us. The proclamation of the social kingship of Jesus Christ is the solution, is the answer right now. And we as Catholics should be leading the charge, politically speaking, in making that proclamation. And as you say, I think right now is a great time. You have Candace Owens saying Christ is King. Well, yep, okay, so now we have millions of people who have heard it, but what does it mean? I'm assuming your book is going to fill in those blanks.
Absolutely. And we've all, I mean, look at Poland. They say Christ is king. It's part of their political agenda. And I, in the book, I show where political movements in order to increase birth rates, ban pornography, those things are actually happening in the world, are being passed by legislatures. It's not impossible to think abortion should be banned, pornography should be banned. We can somehow increase birth rates. There are policies, there are tax policies, there are things that we can do to celebrate matrimony, motherhood, celebrate women in their highest vocation, which is bringing in new human persons to populate heaven. There are things we can do to change, not just to set up a bunch of rules. I think when we start talking about Christian nationhood, because we live in the Anglo-Saxon WASP legacy, it's like Inquisition, like Monty Python kind of stuff. We're talking about elevating marriage. We're talking about elevating motherhood. We're talking about the true vocation of what it means to be a man and to be masculine and to be a father in the image of God the Father and Saint Joseph. Like, we're bringing so many beautiful things to the table. And we live in a culture, you know, we've had these tragedies happening. We live in a culture where people are open to those answers having to be spiritual, supernatural, Christotelic. Like, young people, especially Gen Z, I think, are open to having that conversation and receptive to it. So it's a great, I think maybe the older generation who we call the boomers, they've been more accustomed to sort of this compromise situation, kind of the Ronald Reagan moral majority solution. I think that's kind of, MAGA is in that stream. But I think there's something maybe even more exciting, more optimistic, more, hey, let's take this for Jesus Christ. Yeah. Let's bring his Beatitudes. Let's bring the beauty of the Christian gospel and the message to the social sphere. And so I hope that this book is a big splash. I really hope, you know, that it's already a #1 bestseller in its category on Amazon. We're hoping that it gets on the New York Times bestseller list, because I want conservative commentators and people who are into politics, even if they don't totally agree with it, to say, you know, that this is a perspective and that this is a growing movement and people are interested in this. And again, in the book, you might think it's just for Americans. This book is written for all nations. Like, Christ is King of all nations, not just America. So obviously I'm an American and I'm coming from that point of view, but I think what's in this book applies to France. It applies to Poland.
Absolutely.
It applies to Scotland. Just pick a place, whether it was Christian in the past or it needs to be Christian in the future. All of these principles, the social teachings of the church, natural law, Augustine, the interface between the city of God and the city of man, which is a huge project of Augustine, we have that. Mm-hmm. Like, we are so wealthy. And so we can actually bring that to the public conversation. And I think in America, you mentioned, we were starting to get a majority. It kind of fell apart in the 60s with, the new teachings about religious tolerance. And I think we could pick it up again, and we could make America Catholic.
Absolutely, and that should be the slogan: "Make America Catholic again, so that America can become great again." I noticed that the foreword of your book is written by the great Harrison Buckner, which I think is a real coup. Congratulations on that, because he's been a role model for so many people. In fact, we tried to get him to the Shard pilgrimage, and I'd like to try again next year. But I want to ask you something about that maybe you can help me out, because Harrison Buckner was one of the first during the run-up to the last election to courageously say to J.D. Vance, hey, J.D., what are we doing here? We can't compromise on abortion. I don't know if you remember this, but he really tried. Mm-hmm. He tried to do, and this is leading up to my question for you, he tried to do what we should all be doing. Don't either lionize or vilify the conservative politicians that we do have that are buying us a little bit of a reprieve now from the Kamala Harris and the whole Great Reset and all of that. So I want to ask you in those terms, because now we've moved away from the election cycle. And I think everybody was so frantic before the last election that it was just a case of, who's your alternative? What, are you going to vote for Kamala Harris? Well, that was never an option, obviously. Right. So I want to ask you, now that you've written this book, it's not a question of being critical or condemning Donald Trump for not understanding things like the abortion pills or gay marriage or whatever, but there is a slide in that direction. Now, it seems to me, along the lines of becoming a true Christian patriot, as the title of your book, we have to be courageous enough to exercise as much pressure as we possibly can on these politicians to not take the entire movement in the direction of abortion pills and gay marriage. So in other words, it's not criticizing them, expecting them to be Catholic on some level. I'm talking about Trump specifically. But it's more saying we want to be that leaven. We want to be in the society. We want to have the courage, as your book, I'm assuming, does, I can't wait to read it, to stand up and say, wait a minute, it's much more than just make America great again and the deism that went into the founding of our country. It's about making Christ king again. And when you have a guy like Donald Trump, who seems like he might actually listen to people, he does listen to demographics for sure. And it's sad that the Catholic voting bloc kind of let that slide on the abortion pill, when they should have been the ones leading the charge to say, Mr. President, we really appreciate what you're doing. In 2016, we all did that. But we need to stay strong on these moral issues, because if we don't, we're just going to repeat history and go back to the same place that we are now, a generation or 10, 15 years from now. So what do you say to people, when it comes to Donald Trump? We as Catholics understand his strengths and his weaknesses. How do we interject pressure? How do we exercise pressure on him? Without coming off as just never Trumpers and condemning him right out of the gate.
Yeah. I mean, an excellent example is the one you just brought up, Harrison Butker. He wrote the foreword of the book. It's an excellent, I'm so honored, because I think Harrison Butker is a young man, and he is a Christian patriot. He's a traditional Catholic. He attends the traditional Latin Mass. He's married. He has 3 beautiful children. He's very vocal about his Catholic faith. He makes the sign of the cross. He famously was wearing the brown scapular when he won the Super Bowl with that field goal. I mean, he's taking up space. He's very public. He got in big trouble, even with Taylor Swift and all the people in the media, when he gave the commencement speech at Benedictine College, where he talked about, yes, women, you have a degree, but the most important thing is marriage and children. Mm-hmm. Like, the feminists just shrieked at an NFL player. They tried to cancel him. They went after him. He is very bold. He's saying, and he was just assigned by Donald Trump on a special commission. He was at the White House. Harrison was at the White House like a week and a half ago. Donald Trump is bringing him in on like a commission for like sports and health for America. So he, and yet he's also very vocal about, hey, Republicans, we need to be pro-life. We can't have the abortion pills. We can't do so. He is, I think, the exemplar of what it means to be a Christian patriot. That's why I'm so honored that he wrote the foreword. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to make the sign of the cross. We have to speak boldly. We have to say the things that would be offensive to secular culture. And then what's so cool about Harrison is he's just so bold. Like, he just in a way, he's kind of carefree. It's like, this is who I am. I'm not going to deny it. And I think that's how we all have to be. And especially young men, I think looking for an exemplar, that's the archetype of what we need to do in the public square. I mean, I look at, sometimes you look at these political assemblies and there's a Catholic cardinal or Catholic bishop, and they don't even pray in Jesus' name. Right. Or they don't make the sign of the cross. And it's just such a punch in the gut to us, because if no one's going to be offended if a Catholic cardinal makes the sign of the cross. Right. You know, if Harrison Butker, an NFL player, can make the sign of the cross when he kicks a field goal, a Catholic cardinal can make the sign of the cross at a Republican dinner or whatever it is. So it's just, those are the kind of things where we've been so brainwashed from the hierarchy all the way down, like, don't be Catholic in public.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. I heard Bishop Fillet once say, every time you make the sign of the cross in public, everyone who sees it receives one drop of grace on them. And I thought, like, that's a cool thing to think about. Like, if you're at a restaurant and you're like, I don't want to pray, do it. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. People see that, but you are proclaiming Christ in a tiny way. But grace is being communicated through the sacramentals, which is the sign of the cross. So it's just, I think that consistent, bold, I am a Catholic, these are my beliefs, this is what I want for society. I will hold you accountable within our own conservative circles, but this is what we are marching towards. And I hope this book encourages millions of other people to have the same position and the same attitude, that this is who I am. I am not going to separate the church and state in my soul.
Yeah.
I cannot separate the church and state in my soul. Who I am as an American, who I am as a Catholic, it's the same person.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to apologize for that, and I'm going to press forward. That's what we need to do.
And there's a certain level, Taylor, of self-defense that everyone should start thinking about right now. And that is that if things continue to go, if we don't hold the Catholic ground in the political sphere, it's not a question of we're just going to vote indefinitely. It might be a point. It's never going to be an example of voting for the Democrats, voting for the worst, right? But if it continues to slide, if we don't do our job, and if we don't do what your book is trying to encourage people to do, become Christian patriots, we may come to a point, Taylor, in this country. I talked to Bishop Schneider some time ago about what it was like in the Soviet Union. He said, we didn't vote. Our parents didn't vote. You had atheistic communists and you had communists, and they were all the same. One said they were a little less than the other, but they were all, so you didn't get to vote. You couldn't in conscience vote. So that's what we're actually facing when you see sort of the slide on the cultural and moral issues, even in this country. If the brakes aren't tapped, and I think we're in a perfect position to tap the brakes right now because we have some momentum and books like yours are going to help. But if the brakes are not tapped, we may come to the point where we just, martyrdom is it. We won't even be able to influence politics. We won't be able, in good conscience, to vote for the guy who's rabidly pro-abortion. That could come, and I'm talking about the guy on the conservative side. That could very easily come. So what do you say about that? There's also a self-defense mechanism involved. We need to get serious here.
Yeah, I mean, in the book, I'm challenging people, like, think about your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren. What do they inherit? What do they get? I would be so grateful to our Lord Jesus Christ if my great-grandchildren inherited something like 13th century France, where there was an integration and where they were safe at Mass, and when they went to school, marriages were intact, and you didn't have to worry about pornography being streamed on iPhones in the locker room, and that there was wholesomeness, and that young men would be able to meet wholesome young women and enter into wedlock and have families. That's not what Gen Z is waking up to. And I can't even think about what do they call after Gen Z? A again? I mean, A, B, like, what is it like in 60 years? And so it's really, there is a selflessness in it. Like, we are supposed, and this is Christianity, we are supposed to build for the next generation. That's why we baptize our babies. Like, we realize that this is a generational blessing. Mm-hmm. And so we have to do it, of course, for our own salvation and honor of Jesus Christ as Christ the King. But, you know, building a nation and building a society and a culture is for the kids. We do it for the kids and the grandkids. And so that's another big part of it is what is our legacy and what inheritance are we leaving? And we will be judged by Christ on that, on how we perform on that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and then of course the end game of all that is when it gets completely degenerate and destroyed, then it's just martyrdom. It's blood,
absolute chaos,
and in a way that's absolutely horrific. but also the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, and being a martyr, being classified as a martyr, being a martyr in heaven is a high ranking. It's a beautiful vocation. I'd like to say I'd be accepting of it, just kill me quick, but we want to live in a society where human flourishing, within the grace of God is a possibility and is the norm. It's been done before. We can do it again. We just have to be Christian patriots. And there's a big movement called Christian nationalism, and I kind of am distancing myself a little bit from that. It's more of a Protestant idea, and I'm emphasizing the term patriotism because Thomas Aquinas says patriotism is a virtue under justice, and we need to be doing virtue ethics. And patriotism, according to Aquinas, is love for patria. Patria is Latin for fatherland, and I love that. Nation is from natus, birth. Nation is where you're born, but a patria, a fatherland, that's your connection with your father and his father and the faith of your fathers. Like there's something really beautiful about the idea of your country as a patria as opposed to just a nation.
Isn't that? That's so true because so many people think it's the federal government for which we feel patriotism. Yes. It's not. It's the
patria. And the word patria, of course, it roots us into our fathers and honor your father and mother. It roots us into the clergy, who we call father, holy father, pope. But it also roots us into the ultimate reality, which is God the Father. Mm-hmm. And so I think if we use the word patriotism, patria, pater, all that kind of language really does root us into the mystery of the Trinity and human civilization and true anthropology. And so I know the Protestants are running with Christian nationalists and Christian nationalism. I'm kind of subtly suggesting, I understand where they're coming from, but I think from a Catholic point of view, we want to focus more on the patria and the patriotism. And also nationalism obviously has some connections with, of course, the left wants to connect it with Nazism and all that. So I think patriotism is healthier, it's sanitized, and it actually has theological layers on it.
That's the thing. I know you're a busy guy. I'm gonna let you go, but I think that the book, the title of the book, Christian Patriot, we have to reassert the fact that our political block means something. If we're just going to get pushed around every single time to the point where finally we're voting for partial birth abortion and gay and everything in the name of lesser of two evils, well, we're not exercising any sort of a Christian patriotic political influence. So if we're going to be in this political arena, and we need to be because we have the right to defend our fatherland, our country, our hearth and home, right? We have to try everything we possibly can to do that. But at the same time, we have to let it be known you can only push us so far. And there is, as you say, there's theological foundations for patriotism, for why we feel it's necessary as Catholics to be a resistance, to resist it going any further in the direction of hell. And so I think the book is going to help, from what you said so far, really help to sort of theologically arm people that we are actually a force to be reckoned with. We're not just pushovers that are going to go along forever being pushed around by people who have no theological foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and President Trump did choose J.D. Vance, whether you like J.D. Vance or not, or what your opinion on him being a Catholic. He is a Catholic, and I think that shows that in the mind of Donald Trump, in order for him to win, he knows he needs the Catholics.
Absolutely.
When you start having to stack either your cabinet or the VP office with Catholics, we should be aware, like our antennas should go up and be like, they know they need us.
Exactly right.
So this is the moment for us to really assert ourselves. And I think during the election, you did a good job. I try to do a good job as well of, yes, we support, but as Catholics, we disagree with these issues and we're very serious about them. And I actually saw, I believe Trump did, I think, sort of signal back to us and counter and change some things that he was saying. And so I think we just got to be much more bold moving forward, with these strategies. This is who we are as a Catholic people. We are Christian patriots. We will not budge. We will make the sign of the cross. We will say in the name of Jesus, he's the king.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you push us too far, we won't vote. We don't want it to come to that, but it could come to that.
That's right. Yeah. But we are powerful. I mean, honestly, like the biggest demographic, I think, besides male and female, is Catholic in America.
That's right.
Why aren't we flexing? Like we should be flexing that humbly, but we should be like, listen to us. This is who and sadly, I think our hierarchy and our clergy haven't harnessed that power. Yeah. And I think hopefully we'll see how this pontificate is, and we'll see, who the cardinals are the next 5-10 years. But hopefully we can harness these numbers and this energy and build something beautiful for Jesus Christ. So I'd really appreciate if your viewers, your audience would support me in this. I think it's going to shift the Overton window, and you can buy it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. You can also go to christianpatriotbook.com. We have a special limited number. I think there's 500 that I've signed and Harrison Bucker have signed, kind of a commemorative edition. So if you'd like that, it may be a gift for someone who's a fan. christianpatriotbook.com, you can get those, or Amazon, whatever. And we really just want to make a splash with this because we want Christians, Catholics, Republicans, MAGA to rethink what is the American founding, what is the Christian political theory, how do we win for Christ the King?
Yeah. That's it.
The goal.
That's it, Taylor. I really appreciate the book. I appreciate your time to share it with my audience. And congratulations. It just seems like a really exciting project. And I hope that our viewers will order a whole bunch of them and make this a smashing success. So thank you so much for writing it. And thanks for the fight that you're fighting. I'm proud to ally with you and keep the faith and keep fighting.
Thank you, Michael. You're doing great work. I appreciate you, your audience, everything you do. So God bless.
Thanks. God bless you.